Okay, we're in Haftarah Vayishlach, if I pronounced that right. So the Haftarah is the entire book of Obadiah. Now, I want to say this like as kind of a, I don't know, disclaimer, maybe. So when I first started out doing this course in the introduction, I said that there are some slight differences in the choices of books, the books that were chosen for the Haftarahs. And one of the things was depending on whether one was using the Sephardic or the Ashkenazi readings, right? And I said that I would be using the Ashkenazi version because that just happens to be the version of the source that I use for my Torah readings, for the Torah portions every week, right? Well, in this Haftarah, there's a departure from that, and so we're actually using the Sephardic reading. The reason I'm saying this is that if you were expecting Hosea chapter 11 through chapter 12, verse 13, you're not wrong. I'm just using a different source. And I don't really know why it sort of switches to the Sephardic instead of the Ashkenazi for this version. But that's the reason why it may be different from what maybe you were expecting. Okay, so Obadiah it is. Well, the first thing that struck me about this Haftarah is just how little time that I have actually spent in this book before. Because I'd forgotten that the prophet Obadiah, he's actually addressing Edom and not Israel, or Judah in this case, because at this point the 10 northern tribes that we talked about before, they've been scattered, and so what's left are the southern tribes, which collectively is called Judah. So Edom was a kingdom that had neighbored the kingdom of Judah on the other side of the Dead Sea. And as I mentioned before, we're reading the whole book. Well, Obadiah is just one chapter long. And it's a series of judgment poems. And they center around a rebuke of Edom, where God announces judgment on this kingdom of Edom, for the way that they conspired with the Babylonians in attacking Jerusalem. So Edom had mistreated Judah, and the other thing was that they were like very happy at Judah's troubles. This was during the time of the Babylonian siege of Judah and Jerusalem. So Edom was complicit and also participated in this assault. Now, most scholars believe that Obadiah lived in the time period after this Babylonian destruction, but before the exiles of Judah returned. Remember, they returned under the decree of Cyrus. But not much is really known about Obadiah. Now, I did hear something interesting from a Jewish source that says that Obadiah was a descendant of a convert from Edom. So therefore, he was a descendant of Esau. And that leads us to the Parsha tie-in. Now, our Torah portion, Vayishlach, that covers the interactions between Jacob and Esau, right? And it ends with the two of them burying their father Isaac. Now, it seems to be maybe that they have come to some sort of a kind of a peace between the two of them in order for them to bury their father. But at the end of the Torah portion, we still don't know what will happen to these two nations. You know, the twins represent two nations, and the Torah says that it was the two of them, two nations, warring in Rebekah's womb. Well, it turns out that the difficulties between Jacob and Esau, the difficulties that they had in their relationships with one another, that played out in the lives of their descendants. So the descendants of Esau, and Esau was also called Edom. So the descendants of Esau is the Edomites, right? The nation or the kingdom of Edom. And as I said before, they acted treacherously against the descendants of Jacob, who was called Israel. And of course, Jacob's descendants are also called Israel. So, things between Edom and Israel became very severe. And so when I say Israel, what I'm speaking of right now specifically, of course, is the southern tribe Judah. And so their relationship, Edom's relationship with Judah at the time of Judah's fall to Babylon, was pretty awful. And so Obadiah's prophecies are telling us what was going on. Now, at a later time, according to this Haftarah, God will send a message or a messenger to the nations of the world, calling them to come against the descendants of Esau and to be that rod of correction for Edom. There's a verse that says, if you mount on high as the eagle, and though your nest is set among the stars, I will bring you down from there. And Obadiah also tells us the reason for it. And the reason is in verse 10, and it says it's because of the violence that you've done to your brother Jacob. Now, it's interesting to me what God says was the sin that sealed Edom's fate. Because Edom, there was a number of sins, right? Arrogance and violence in that kingdom's attempts at world domination. But that wasn't the sin that sealed Edom's fate. It was Edom's treatment of his brother Jacob for standing by and letting evil do its work through the Babylonians. It was Edom's gloating over the pain of Judah. Now, compassion, or in this case, the lack of compassion, that's very, very serious to God. Edom thought that they were better than Israel, and this blinded them to what was actually their common identity under God, right? Because they're all descendants of Abraham. And so this is the lesson of this Haftarah that I wasn't really expecting would be brought out, and it kind of snuck up on me. So when I was first kind of reading through Obadiah and praying about the lesson that should be gleaned from this, I wasn't really expecting how it kind of turned out. Like, I wasn't looking at Edom's sin against Judah and then equating it with my own sin in regard to those whose demise that I've gloated over. Ouch, right? But that's kind of where this went. I wasn't really expecting that this Haftarah would cause me to examine my own life, to reflect back on those times when I think I'm better than someone who sins differently than I do. Now, I'm sure that I'm not the only one who has ever done that, right? The danger when we do this is that we stop seeing ourselves as part of larger humanity. You know, all of us sinners under the sovereignty of God, but also under his love and his commitment. So this Haftarah kind of served as a reminder to me that we're all the same. We all sin, and we're all in need of God's mercy. So it's not us versus them mentality. And you know, as we enter the winter holiday season, we're going to get a lot of practice at being compassionate to those who celebrate holidays that we don't anymore, right? And oh my goodness, everywhere that we turn, it seems like Team A is gloating over the downfall or the trouble that's happening to Team B because Team B is the enemy, right? Now, the intent here is not to make you or me feel down on ourselves because we've done this. Because in a lot of ways, we're under attack with like a subliminal pressure to form alliances of us versus them, right? I wonder if you've seen the documentary Social Dilemma. It actually talks about a whole lot of scary things and about how the media is like manipulating us. But specifically, what I'm talking about here is how in that movie, Social Dilemma, it demonstrates how our brains are actually being messed with and even rewired by algorithms. Um, Algorithms intended for us to buy into like distorted ideas about the world, about ourselves, about each other. So, like on Facebook, for example, and I love Facebook. I have a love-hate relationship with Facebook, right? So on Facebook, the algorithms are designed to only show us content that we agree with. Now think about that. What's wrong with that, right? Well, what it does is it closes us off to dialogue with those who are different from us, right? And when it does that, it kind of fuels that we versus them mentality. Now, I love this quote by Rabbi Noah Weinberg. He says, beware of any system that discourages questioning. Anyone who stifles questions is afraid that it could uncover the falseness of the beliefs. It's kind of powerful, right? Now, in truth, we can actually learn from one another, even if, and especially if, we disagree with that person. I wonder, have you, of course you have, we've all heard the joke, ask 3 rabbis, get 4 opinions. Well, that's kind of how it is in Judaism in a lot of ways. There's more of a willingness to learn from someone with an opposing viewpoint. It's actually called, to have a dialogue with this person is actually called controversy for the sake of heaven. Controversy for the sake of heaven. Now, in the Talmud, and of course that's one of Judaism's core religious texts. Did you? I thought this was fascinating when I first learned it. The Talmud is actually like structured as a collection of arguments from rabbis that come from different schools of thought that are disagreeing with each other, right? Maybe you've heard of 2 really famous rabbinic schools of thought. You've got the school of Hillel and the school of Shammai, right? Well, the thing about these 2 men and then the schools that they founded, they disagreed on just about everything. Like, seriously, just about everything. Vehemently disagreed. But both of their arguments are included in the Talmud. There's a work called The Ethics of the Father, and it has this famous quote, and it says that every dispute for the sake of heaven, in the end, that will endure. But if it's not for the sake of heaven, then it's not going to endure. And then they ask, well, which is the controversy that's for the sake of heaven? And then the answer they give is, well, that's the controversy of Hillel and Shammai. So Hillel and Shammai, I mean, I can't like overstate that. They had like irreconcilable differences between the 2 of them on any number of things. But what set, and that's not unusual, but what set them apart is that they didn't ever argue in order to win against the other. They didn't ever argue to destroy the other side. They argued to discover the truth. That's controversy for the sake of heaven, right? You're arguing, you're discussing, not to be right, not to prove the other wrong, not for a we versus them mentality, but for the sake of discovering the truth and trusting God that his truth will come out. That's also key. And so here in this Haftarah, we can learn from this grave mistake that Edom made, who instead of embracing Judah as their brother, they gloated over their struggles and they added to their struggles. So I think we can learn something. We can make sure that even when we're dealing with people that have irreconcilable differences with us, we could remember to think of them as our brothers and our sisters, loved by the same Father. If it's true that there's a divine spark in every one of us, and I believe that very much that that's true, then everyone, even the person you vehemently disagree with, has a part of God in them. Therefore, we're brothers and sisters. So here is your assignment for the week. The next couple of times that you get into a disagreement with someone, and you're probably not going to need to go too far into the week before that happens, right? But next time you get into a disagreement with someone, take their side of the argument. Now, I'm not saying you have to agree or believe, but at least verbally agree with their point of view and argue for it. Because then you can understand it, and then you can see where they're coming from. And what that can do is it can help you to develop the skills that are necessary for engaging in a controversy for the sake of heaven. So, when you do this, I would love to hear how it went. So I would love for that last part that I just did, I would love for that to have been where I ended it. But that's not how it's working out. This strange phenomena is happening when I work on a new Haftarah lesson. It usually takes me about a week from start to finish, from the beginning of it to when I go to record. And there's usually a couple of days in between after I kind of have all my thoughts. I like to put all my thoughts down on paper first because I feel more comfortable communicating written, and I don't feel so comfortable communicating verbally, whether that's in person or a recording. And when I record these, I consider that I'm talking directly to you all. So there's always a couple of days in between, and what's been happening is our Father is taking these lessons that he's downloading me on an intellectual level, and he's saying, okay, I'm gonna put you in this situation where you're going to experience this very thing that you're talking about. So just the other day, I had finished all of the the outline or whatever of this lesson, and he had something happen, and I think I'm supposed to share it. So a author that I really admire, she's written a number of books, and I'm not going to give names here because that's not the point. She had on her Facebook page, it's that Facebook again, she had recommended a video by a person who does, he's got a large YouTube ministry following, and he does videos on various Bible topics. And she was really praising what he had done. And I'm not going to tell you the name. I'm not going to tell you any details about it because that's not the story. But I will tell you the name of, kind of basically the name of the video was is the Torah relevant for Christians? And okay, so how does this relate to this lesson? Well, this person made some statements that I was agreeing with, and then he made some statements that I vehemently was opposed to. I could feel. You ever get this way when someone says something that is so against what you believe, you can like feel your anger welling up inside of you and this like righteous indignation. And so it was in a morning time, and I'm scrolling through Facebook, and I was thinking my whole day is ruined. This guy has this large platform. He's appealing to people who are interested in Hebraic things, and he's making these outlandish faults, and it really was going to ruin my day. So I took it to God in prayer, thinking that I was, I don't know, fooling God. I was so angry, and so I gave this prayer that I tried to sanitize, to make myself sound better than what I was really feeling on the inside, and was basically asking him to open up the eyes of this man who just is clueless and he doesn't know. And boy, wouldn't it be great, God, if you, would turn his thinking around, and all these people that listen to him, having said this really bad thing, that he'll come back and repent and all this. And I was feeling good of myself that I was taking it to God, right? And that I was letting him kind of in this situation. And after I finished this intercessory prayer, God reminded me of this lesson, and kind of helped me to point out that my attitude in praying wasn't going to get me anywhere, because my attitude was me against him. So we, Torah pursuant, against those that have not come to that understanding. And my prayer set that dynamic up, right? So God will hear that prayer, but what's he gonna think of that, right? And then I noticed that my attitude was, I've got it all right, and he's wrong, and we need to pity him for being wrong. And I was just, I started laughing, and I was like, thank you, Father. This is exactly that kind of thing. So what I did is I listened to listen to my teaching, right? And I thought, okay, what would be a controversy for the sake of heaven? How can I turn this around? I didn't even listen to the end of the guy's video. He could have at the end said, just kidding, guys, it's really this. I didn't listen to it because it was me against him, right? He was the other. And so what ended up happening is I was able to listen to what his arguments were. Listen to his side, right? And I listened to it with this idea that there's a divine spark of God in him. He's my brother. We're family. God is sovereign over both of us. God knows that I am wrong about things. Maybe this guy's wrong about this, but that doesn't mean I'm better than him because I think I have the truth that he doesn't. And I was able to hear his claims, really listen to them, and what it did in the end is it helped me to solidify what I actually believe, right? And so I guess I'm bringing this as an encouragement to you that this process actually works. When I'm asking you to look at the other point of view and really see them as a brother or sister, and really try to understand where they're coming from, even if you vehemently are against it, something good can happen. Not only can you see that person as a brother or sister, which is very important because we're all one family, but a lot of times it will help you solidify your own beliefs. If we're not willing to listen to what somebody says that's different from what we believe or opposite, we may not know just how deeply our beliefs are. And so, me kind of taking these steps that I had outlined to you, doing this in this situation, I feel even more strongly convinced that the Torah is beautiful, and it's not, for a time, other people. It's for me. It's for us. And the feeling that I have in um, understanding that even deeper now is only because I took the time to look at it from this other person's standpoint, right? So there's my story, and hopefully it encourages you to kind of see your, I don't want to say enemy, but to see the person who's different from you, to see them differently, and to reap the blessings of the lesson from this Haftarah. Okay, so now I'll see you next week in the next Haftarah.